Does Joyboy have the strongest Haki in One Piece? After Joyboy's incredible display of power on Egghead Island, that is the question I'm left asking, as it may have just been the most incredible Haki feat in the series to date. Over the time that we have followed Luffy's journey to become the Pirate King, we have continuously seen him be presented with new obstacles to overcome. This eventually led to the introduction of Haki, and through the arcs we have seen this power system continue to evolve with its many unique use cases and the advanced forms they take to further enhance the user's combat ability. Whether it be in the form of observation and its advanced counterpart Future Sight, armament in Rio, or the most vital Haki in Conquerors itself with its advanced uses, we have seen many impressive feats of strength from Haki users, even from Luffy himself. On Egghead Island, we perhaps witnessed the most impressive feat of Haki to date, a feat of strength and control so impressive that it transcended time and the planet itself, even affecting some of the most powerful individuals and bringing them to their knees. But what made Joyboy's feat on Egghead Island, in contrast to other incredible Haki feats, so spectacular? Leading up to Egghead, Oda has consistently introduced to us more advanced and stronger forms of Haki mastery that led to more and more impressive feats, but not one had the same impact or presented itself in the same way as Joyboy's. We initially were introduced to the complete concept of Haki by Silver's Rayleigh prior to this time skip, as he established that it would be critical for Luffy to understand it if he wished to find success in the New World. Luffy, in his current state at the time before the time skip, was helpless against the likes of Logia Devil Fruit users who were immune to standard methods of combat. We saw this on display in Luffy's several encounters with Smoker. Luffy had to learn and adapt if he ever wished to be the Pirate King, as many enemies could only be countered with Haki. Ever since the Straw Hats arrived at Sabaody following the time skip, we've been witness to countless displays of Haki use by Luffy. He demonstrated his mastery of both observation and armament many times through the ensuing battles. As we well know, Luffy even possesses Conqueror's Haki and possesses control over it as well, using it at will to often incapacitate his enemies, an example of which was us witnessing Luffy disposing of half of the opposing fishmen that remained sided with Hody Jones during the events of Fishman Island. But as we got further into the time skip, Luffy began to struggle more and more as his adversaries only grew in strength. Rayleigh once said that Haki is fortified in the heat of battle, and if Luffy was going to hone his abilities further, he would have to do just that. His Haki still had weaknesses. Using it with Gear 4 granted him only a temporary boost in power at the expense of being unable to use even the very basics of Haki, leaving him virtually defenseless. This was prominent in his clash with Doflamingo, but Luffy still prevailed nonetheless. This is where we would begin to be presented with methods of Haki that fully demonstrated an individual's complete master over it with the advanced Haki techniques. Luffy had grown skilled with observation Haki, but even he was unaware to how far the limits of these abilities could be pushed. With the introduction of Katakuri, came the introduction of these advanced battle techniques with his formidable Future Sight that rendered Luffy almost defenseless and incapable of capturing an edge against the mighty son of Big Mom. Future Sight does just as the name suggests. Standard observation Haki grants the user to perceive the presence and strength of others. The user can even perceive those who may be concealed. Through finding an individual's aura, it can even assess their strength to an extent, based off their aura as well. It also permits the user to sense someone else's emotions, though this is a limit and can be overcome by the opposing party. When it comes to direct combat, this allows the user to sense an opponent's intent and what they may be intending to do within the immediate future, giving them means to counter such an attack, which is what makes it so useful for combat. But with the introduction of Katakuri, we learned that he had pushed the limits of observation Haki far past its standard limitations. He had honed his abilities in this Haki form to an extraordinary extent that we hadn't been keen to prior to these events. We had been introduced to several uses of observation Haki as I mentioned earlier. We were witness to Luffy using it to help anticipate attacks in battle, and even Usopp locating his enemies, like Sugar on Dressrosa. This is where Oda introduced to us that Haki could be pushed even further than we initially thought, and we hadn't yet seen the full capabilities from actual masters of the art. What made Katakuri's feat observation Haki significantly different than what we witnessed with Joyboy is that this was the first time we had seen advanced usage of Haki in One Piece. Katakuri had enhanced his perceptive abilities so far that he would literally see a short time into the future and even alter it, in contrast to typical observation Haki only permitting a sense of what may come next in battle. This instantly put Luffy at a severe disadvantage. While Luffy had struggled many times in his battles, throughout the entirety of the New World up until this point, Luffy had been as strong, if not stronger than his opponents. The most recent major antagonist that he had faced, Doflamingo, while challenging, was overwhelmed by Gear 4 Luffy. The drawback that hindered Luffy being his limited time able to use the form, but Katakuri managed to render Gear 4 Bounce Man completely useless in the wake of his Future Sight abilities. Being able to see moments of the future, Katakuri could literally envision every action Luffy initiated, and could take countermeasures against it. This works so well due to Katakuri being able to change the shape of his body and rendering Luffy unable to make contact with him at all. This technique has only been obtained by so few as it has to be refined in the heat of of battle, as we saw directly with Luffy. To overcome this massive hurdle in front of him, he had to hone his Haki amidst the battle with Katakuri, so he too could see moments of the future to uncover methods of actually inflicting damage on his mighty opponent. This fight demonstrated just how powerful all forms of Haki can be, and that in the heat of battle, great strides in strength can be made. Luffy eventually overcame Katakuri with a mix of his own future sight and Gear Force Snake Man obtaining enough speed to bypass some of Katakuri's offenses. Up until now, only 4 users of Future Sight have been seen: Luffy, Katakuri, Shanks, and Kaido, showing just how limited this coveted ability is. Shortly after the introduction of Advanced Observation, we would be introduced to a form of advanced armament, the next step in Luffy's journey to grow stronger to topple a new powerful enemy. In Wano, armament Haki is commonly referred to as Ryo. Luffy found himself completely overwhelmed by Kaido's power and endurance in their initial encounter. Luffy, using the hardening abilities of armament, unleashed Gear 4 and a barrage attacks on Kaido, but even that failed to leave any significant signs of damage on the mighty Yonko. The one to introduce the notable context of the next step for Luffy to advance his armament abilities came at the hands of Hyogoro the Flower, who explained that there was another usage of this form of Haki, Ryo, where skilled and competent users can emit their Haki out of their body beyond just basically using it to harden themselves. This ability makes it where the user can emit a burst of Haki without making a direct contact with the recipient. What made this technique so useful against the likes of Kaido is that Luffy, when landing a blow that would once do virtually nothing to him, could unleash a burst of Ryo to damage Kaido. Armament Haki functioned differently in Wano in the form of Ryo, as they called it. And individuals in Wano focus on the flow of Haki, showing that there's a difference between how they use armament Haki and how Luffy used it. Where normal armament coats the user in Haki directly, Ryo, working as a form of emission, is the ability that enables Luffy to transfer the Haki surrounding him into the likes of Kaido, to the point that it can even hurt him from the inside. Normal armament Haki works like armor and can be used to bolster the user's attacking strength as it combines with their very body, but these attacks proved useless against Kaido as his endurance was far too great. But where this failed, Ryo succeeded. Ryo, where emitting the Haki from one's body, essentially making a barrier surrounding them and making it flow into a directed target, bypassed Kaido's formidable exterior and proved much more efficient in harming the Emperor from the inside. Hyogoro even states that Ryo is a technique used by the samurai in Wano, as with this advanced control they can use their swords to inflict devastating damage, or make it where their swords won't even cut paper. But we kind of learned that advanced armament through the use of damaging one's enemy without contact wasn't enough for Luffy to topple Kaido. It would require a form of Haki that very few possess. The scabbards who we know can use Ryo, while able to damage Kaido, weren't leaving any lasting effects. The same applied to Luffy, up until Luffy had the realization that Kaido had been fighting with a technique that granted him an upper hand, Advanced Conquerors, where Kaido would imbue all of his attacks with Conqueror's Haki. Naturally, only those born with the color of the Supreme King are the ones capable of utilizing it to its advanced extent, but incredibly few of those have actually been able to do so. Prior to this realization, Luffy's attacks had been too shallow as he described, but by infusing his attacks with Conqueror's Haki, his advanced armament attacks greatly grew in power to where they began dealing noticeable damage to Kaido, even without contact. Zoro, though unintentionally, even infused his swords with Conqueror's Haki, which allowed him to scar Kaido, the only one to do so aside from Kazuki Oden. Advanced Conquerors, when infused with armament, clearly provides a significant boost in power. Though this alone didn't defeat Kaido, it did level the playing field that permitted Luffy to have a greater chance of overcoming his foe. What remains one of the most impressive feats of Haki to date was done through the application of Conquerors, but in a different fashion. Shanks displayed immense control and power with his Conquerors. From the shores off of Wano, he was able to direct his overwhelming Conqueror's Haki towards Green Bull, who was on the Wano mainland, which affected him so greatly it convinced him to leave Wano after feeling the intent of the Emperor. This was perhaps the most impressive feat of Haki in all of One Piece up until that point in the series. The realization that Shanks, from a great distance, was able to frighten a Marine Admiral to that extent with nothing but Haki makes it clearly an incredible feat of strength. Now that I've revisited all of these great feats of Haki, what makes Joyboy's the most impressive? We've seen incredible feats like Shanks targeting Green Pool as I just mentioned, but what Joyboy did, in my opinion, is on a whole different level. To the point that what Joyboy did is similar to what Shanks did, but on a much greater scale. To clarify, it's unknown what all Shanks is capable of via Haki. That may have not been the full extent of his strength, but we're surely discussing what Oda has directly shown us. With Emeth on the verge of defeat and wanting to help Luffy and his crew escape Egghead, it's revealed to us that Emeth had one final secret weapon. We see in a flashback that Joyboy had tied a knot of the greatest Haki inside Emeth's body, presumably imbuing his own Conqueror's Haki into the knot, which lasted over 800 years. We have seen Advanced Conquerors before as it features imbuing their attacks with Conquerors, but we hadn't seen it done in such a fashion, as when the knot came loose, the resulting Haki being released was so great that it affected everyone on and surrounding Egghead. Egghead. Marines everywhere became incapacitated. It even affected the Gorosei as it sent them back to Marijois by undoing the method they used to travel there. Even the giants were confused at how the Haki made people disappear. This release of Joyboy's stored Haki even brought Emu to collapse, showing it could be felt even that far away. Whether if Emu was overwhelmed by the strength of the Haki itself, or was simply reminded of Joyboy's presence, is unknown. The extent to which his Haki reached, the sheer volume of individuals who succumbed to it, and knowing how formidable the ones it affected are, is what makes Joyboy's feat so incredible. Perhaps the most incredible feat of Haki in the series to date. Dory and Broggy even remark on it, questioning if it was even stronger than Shanks, and noting the lack of hostility within the Haki. Among the great feats shown in One Piece, I think Joyboy, even with its extremely limited exposure, stands at the apex of the strongest Haki user thus far. But what do you think? Do you think Joyboy's display on Egghead was enough to establish him as the strongest Haki user in One Piece so far? Or is another feat more impressive to you? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Consider hitting the like button if you liked the video, and consider subscribing to the channel if you like the content I make. And thank you so very much for watching.